But first tonight, that big story that I want to focus on. 25 CRPF Jawans have been martyred, 6 injured in a Naxal ambush in Chhattisgarh, Sukma. Naxals have triggered an IED blast. They targeted a CRPF patrol party earlier in the day. The martyred CRPF Jawans belong to the 74th Battalion of the CRPF. The killer ambush took place at Burakpapal near Dornapal station. Naxals looted all the arms and ammunition of the Jawans. Some reports even suggesting as many as 300 Naxals were involved in the attack. There was a 99-member team of the CRPF that was patrolling the area when it was ambushed by the Naxals. The Prime Minister and the Home Minister have offered their condolences to the brave soldiers in Chhattisgarh.
Today, we're going to talk about one of the world's longest and, honestly, bloodiest insurgencies. I mean, for over half a century, it carved this so-called red corridor of conflict right through the heart of India, and it challenged the very authority of the state. But you know, after all those decades of violence, something has dramatically shifted, and it's forcing us to ask a really critical question. For decades, the Maoist, or as you'll often hear it called, the Naxalite insurgency, it really seemed like this unwinnable war, and it claimed thousands and thousands of lives. And yet, just in the last couple of years, the whole thing has seen this absolutely stunning reversal, with thousands of fighters just laying down their arms. You see, the story of how this all fell apart is, in a lot of ways, the story of modern India itself. And the scale of this change is just staggering. I mean, look at this data. It really tells the story. Back in 2010, Maoist influence was spread across almost 100 districts. Now, you fast forward to today, and that number has absolutely plummeted to less than a dozen. So to really get how this incredible collapse happened, we have to go back to where it all began. Okay, so what exactly was this movement? You know, the one that brought parts of the Indian state to a total standstill for so long. What was the idea driving the fight, and how did it even get started? Well, at its very core, it's an armed struggle. The goal here isn't reform, it's straight-up revolution. The whole idea is to seize political power through a guerrilla war fought from the countryside. And its Indian name, Naxalism, that comes from this tiny little village where it all kicked off, Naxalbari. And this timeline, it really shows the pretty remarkable arc of the whole conflict. It all started with this local peasant uprising way back in 1967. By 2004, it had grown into this seriously formidable force that controlled that red corridor we talked about. But wow, the last few years have brought a swift and really dramatic decline. But here's the thing. An ideology by itself doesn't keep a rebellion going for decades, right? For a fire to spread, it needs fuel. And deep in the remote forests and villages of central India, the Maoists found tons of it, all rooted in these deep-seated local grievances. The movement really just thrived in a vacuum. I mean, in a lot of these areas, the state was just gone. No roads, no schools, no healthcare. What was there instead? Poverty, injustice, and a ton of exploitation. So the Maoists just stepped right into that void. They offered their own kind of governance, a promise of justice, and they mobilized all those people who felt totally left behind. For years, the state really struggled to figure out how to respond. But the turning point finally came when the Indian government decided to try a whole new, comprehensive strategy, one that combined overwhelming force with a real promise of development. Okay, now this is where the strategy gets really fascinating. It wasn't just about fighting. It was basically a war on two fronts. So on one side, you've got the hard power, the security stuff, modernizing forces, getting better intel, and physically shrinking Maoist territory. But, and this is just as important, the second front was all about winning over the population but actually delivering what the rebels had only promised. You know, roads, schools, and a real connection to the state. A really key piece of this was the surrender and rehabilitation policy. See, this wasn't just about capturing fighters. It was about convincing them to give up. The state created a real way out, offering not just a pardon, but also cash, housing, and job training for anyone who was just fed up with the fight. And the incredible success of this two-pronged approach is what gives real weight to official statements like this one.
Starting with some breaking news that's coming in the ongoing fight against Red Terror across the country. Breaking news coming in after a large group of Naxals gave up arms in Chhattisgarh. Home Minister Amit Shah has hailed the historic milestone. He has said, and I quote, the most effective districts have been reduced from 6 to just 3, and affected districts to 11 from 18. A huge victory for the security forces in taking on Red Terror across the country, namely the Red Corridor. Home Minister Amit Shah has said that by March 31st, 2026, India will be free from the menace of Naxalism.
That confidence you hear, it's not just talk. It's a reflection of how the government's integrated model really started to dismantle the insurgency from the inside out. So where does all of that leave us today? Well, the insurgency is definitely on the brink of collapse. But what does that actually look like on the ground? And what does the future hold? This number is just, well, it's staggering. More than 2,000 fighters have laid down their arms in just the last couple of years. And we're not just talking about foot soldiers here. This includes senior commanders, and their defections have basically fractured the movement's entire leadership. It created this crisis of faith that just sped up the whole collapse. And this chart, wow, it starkly illustrates the territorial impact. Just look at the difference. From a peak of 96 affected districts in 2010, the insurgency is now completely cornered. In fact, the government reports that the active conflict is pretty much concentrated in just 3 most affected districts now. It's a mere shadow of what it used to be. So what happens next? Well, while the outlook is really positive, long-term success isn't a sure thing. The path could lead to a lasting peace, one built on continued development. But if those deep-rooted problems that fueled the conflict in the first place aren't really fixed, there's always a risk that the insurgency could just adapt and pop up again, maybe in a new and, who knows, perhaps even more dangerous form.